Yo, what up, people on the internets? I'm so happy to be back here with you. And just before we get started with the Outside the Box podcast, I'd just like to say thank you to you guys. You guys have been following the show, and the show has been growing every single week. We are seeing more of you subscribe to us as a podcast on Apple and on Google Play and listening on SoundCloud. And we just want to give a big thank you to you guys because we really appreciate it. And as you hear, I'm saying thank you to you guys from us because I can't do this show all by myself. If this show is an omelet, I am simply the onions on top. They are the pot, they are the pan, they are the fire, they are the eggs. They're all of the other vegetables. I'm simply the onions to add that little extra spice of flavor. And again, I can't do this show by myself, so let me throw it to my man, Nick.
Omelets? I don't even know where to go with that one. Maybe I'm just the Tabasco sauce then. No, my name is Nick Engvall. Been doing sneaker stuff for about 10, 12 years, something like that. And I'm basically, like I said, just the hot sauce here. We're really here just to talk with Tiffany and pretend to be cooler than we really are. So, Tiffany, want to introduce yourself?
I'm Tiffany Beers, former Nike employee. I've been developing, designing, and engineering sneakers for about 13 years. And I have a YouTube channel, Instagram, and I consult on innovation and product development. And yeah, I'm a state championship winning volleyball player.
See, there it is. She tries to sneak it in. And make it seem like, oh, I'm just a regular person like the other two people that are on this podcast. But no. Not only does she innovate, not only does she consult, not only does she design, but apparently she can smash a volleyball into your face from the front row and doesn't really talk about it. Just keeps that on the low. Hey, I just have an extra skill. I'm a master at volleyball. I play the front row. But it's cool. I'm not even going to dig into it. I'll just let it go. I'll just let it pass by. Just know that we're peeling back the layers. I'm telling you, I love this show.
Well, I don't have a sexy radio voice, so
that well. Don't you flatter me there, Tiffany. Anyway, again, welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Outside the Box podcast where we talk about a little bit of everything, but it's all rooted in the world of sneakers because that's where we all come from. But first, we want to talk about some things that Nike is doing. Nike is doing a bit of a digital reboot, I guess you could say. They're really doing a lot of focus on what the Nike Plus membership means to a consumer, and I think this is a very interesting angle that the brand can take, and you see a lot of it obviously as a growth strategy for Nike and growing in this digital age, but it also, I think it benefits consumers as well. There's a store here in LA called Nike Melrose or Nike at Melrose or something like that, and the store is based on the things that people in LA buy. So they look at your Nike Plus membership of the people in a certain zip code, and they see what those people are buying, and they stock the store with those sort of things and exclusives to the LA area. So this I have two trains of thoughts when I think about this. First is they're customizing the experience to the local area, which kind of reminds me of the local shop owner and what the local shop does for the community. Nike is kind of taking that approach but doing it through digital. But then the other approach is this can probably, I imagine this helps with manufacturing and seeing what people are actually buying and rolling out products to different area that maybe are influenced by LA. But I mean, how important, I guess I'm going to toss this to Nick first, how important is the digital and that data for companies like Nike when they open up shops like that, or just in general?
I mean, I think that it's so crucial. I think that, we kind of touched on this on a previous episode, where there's so much going on regardless of LA. Like LA is, LA and New York kind of their own thing, in terms of influence across the world. But if you look at even Houston has just a completely different sneaker game than the rest of the world. And even down in Florida, it's a little bit different. Chicago is still so Jordan oriented because, Michael meant so much to that area. So I think it's great to see this. I hope that it, like me, like I live pretty close to that store, so it's going to be, hopefully catered more to the stuff that I'm into, which, might be, I would think, like seeing more of the Air Max stuff, like they're harder to find when you're hunting them down, like some of the more limited stuff that comes out. I'm driving all the way to Santa Monica sometimes to go to the Nike store to find that stuff. So I think it's a cool direction that they can take. And I think that, the better you can get with it, we're used to, the internet kind of puts things in front of us based on what we already consume, right? Like I like cars, so I see car advertisements all over the place. I like sneakers, I like streetwear, so I see those ads pop up almost everywhere I go on the internet. And I think that the in-person, store experience should be that, right? It's a little scary in one sense, like I think of like that old Tom Cruise movie with that, with the signs, the digital signs popping up saying his name and stuff, which is a little creepy, but But at the same time, like it, me personally, there's no reason to put a, let's say, I don't know, like, anything that's like, I can't think of something that's irrelevant, but like, there's no reason to be talking about strollers for me, because I have no reason to be thinking about buying a stroller, right? Like, so to waste that ad space or that shelf space in a store on anything that's like that, the more of that you can cut out, the more likely I am to buy as a consumer.
Tiffany, what about you? How do you feel about like this whole digital experience where they're like they're taking your data? Are you? I shouldn't say taking your data. That sounds nefarious. Where they're using your data to create a more customized experience.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I want to know more about the logistics of it, like, because if I've already bought in that, I guess you're going to show me similar products, which saves me time. Like if Amazon or Google's listening to me and showing me ads for something that I just need to get and go, like it saves me time, which I like. But like if I'm exploratory shopping and all I see is like this one kind of product, like I'm kind of irritated. Like you're not reading my need because I'm looking for something different. So I guess if like if you're talking like how local are you talking, how regional are you talking, like in how many Nike stores are in LA, are they going to all be kind of centric about a different topic? Like, is one going to be running, one's, like, I guess it all depends on how they do it and what they do it. But typically, if I've already bought the product, I don't need another one. So how does that work too,
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought about that as well. So from what I understand, it's based on the 5 zip codes around the store and 22 other random zip codes in the LA area. They didn't specify exactly what that area is, but it's like just random zip codes around LA, and they have basically like the essentials, I guess, things that people are constantly buying in the store. So it's almost like a grocery store, I guess, in that sense, where they're like, okay, people are going to come get eggs, people are going to come get milk, people are going to get soda, get potato chips. So they have that that's in the back of the store where they have like the basic essentials, like the compression pants, the running shirts,
socks,
and the socks, those sorts of things. But then they also have like sneakers and customized stuff around throughout the store. There's something that I found really interesting about the rollout and at the store, though, is that it's not hype or heat product that's going to be inside the store. So for Nick and I, it's not necessarily somewhere that we would want to go shop because it's not like hyped up product. So I found that to be pretty interesting and an interesting take on a store or a concept store in that sense, because generally those sorts of stores cater to the energy consumer, and this seems like it's doing really the opposite.
I was gonna say, so that's interesting in that snafu. That like based on when they purchased, did they happen to say like the purchase history from 3 months ago, 2 months ago? Because I still think, like, to your point, Jacques, like heat product is gonna matter. Like the essentials only get you so far, and it's not really that exciting. Like I might as well just order them all on Amazon. Like for me, essentials all come from Amazon. Done. And so like I wouldn't really want to go to a store to just get an essential. Like it's more like I want to try in a new product, and I don't want to have 10 shipped to my house and then have to deal with the return, and if I forget to return it or any of that stuff. So yeah, I think they have a lot to work out in it, but I was kind of assuming that it was some heat product actually, and I was trying to think of how on earth are they going to produce that, because they can't predict what's going to be heat necessarily unless it's a Jordan that they haven't released in the recent decade.
Right.
See, I would think of it as like more, total assumption, but like based on your videos, Tiffany, right? Like most of the stuff that you're buying as a consumer is like, let's say running shoes that's a pretty broad, genre. Like you have, even just like going back to like we talked about Boost, like there's so many different variations of, Boost and the slight variances across, even with Nike, right? Like there's so many different versions of, like the variations of like the Flyknit trainer over the years, or even like the newer stuff, right? Where we're getting into, the React stuff. Like that stuff has 3 or 4 different versions. So I think like, taking us out of the equation and looking at like the, kind of 80% of consumers that don't really know the difference between, the 3 or 4 different React shoes that are out there. That consumer is more likely probably to go in and want to try things on and have that experience in person, where I think like, as they develop this kind of approach, it could easily swing to, I think to Jacques' point about the grocery store, you're absolutely going to have some form of energy product in there. Like they need that to just, even to get the, what I would consider the energy of the business, and the influencers and, creators talking about that product or talking about that store specifically. They want to have that product in there, but very limited, right? It's like, it's more, you're going to see, I think you're going to see less, let's say LeBrons, right? Like they probably won't have LeBrons in a store like that, or they'll have a very limited number of LeBrons, where like, the shoes that are more broadly accepted or liked, like a Kyrie or something, will maybe be their pinnacle basketball shoe for that store. But the cool thing about it is, if like to your point about the timeline of where these people are buying what, you might be able to refine that so well that like it would potentially help them be ahead of the curve when they start seeing like basketball shoes come back into style. And if people are buying basketball shoes online and you can shift more of that store into basketball, using that data to kind of predict it, maybe not, I would assume they're probably going back like quite a ways to make it really valuable, but like seasonally too, like I think that's always a challenge for retailers, is to when do people buy basketball shoes? Because the basketball season for a high school kid is not the same as the basketball season for college. It's not the same for the basketball season for the pros. So it's going to be interesting. And I think like, my curiosity about this whole thing is like how much integration comes through the app. Is that something that, they're already pretty good. Like I only have experience at like the Santa Monica store here, and I'm not sure how many stores. You could probably talk to that, Jacques. But the one thing that was really cool about Santa Monica is you can go in and you can look up a shoe on your app, and you can actually have them pull your size without even talking to somebody. You could have it like say, I want a size 13, I want to try this shoe on, and you walk into the store and somebody's got it there for you, which is pretty cool. It definitely makes the experience a lot quicker. You don't have to be like standing around waiting for somebody nearly as much as you used to.
Yeah, the retail experience is changing, and even at this Melrose store, they have curbside pickup, so you could literally use your app to order something, and someone will bring it to you curbside. You don't even have to get out of your car to pick it up.
Awesome.
They have like lockers. If you do want to get out, say you want to get out, you want to go look inside the store, or you buy something, you can just have them stored in the locker that's on premises. And when you get to the store, you just scan your barcode on your phone. It opens up the locker, and you just grab your shoes and walk out. So they're doing a lot of cool stuff in that regard. And just like Nick mentioned, like you can scan something in your app, and then you can choose whether you want someone to bring it to you or if you want them to put it inside of a dressing room for you. So you can put together like an entire outfit basically, and have them and say, oh, you don't have to carry the clothes around. Basically, you just scan in your app and say, take it to a dressing room. And when you're ready, you request product, and someone will pull the product for you and have it waiting for you in the dressing room. It's pretty intense. It's pretty crazy, like the kind of things that you're able to do with that stuff and with that data. And I feel like that helps them as well. Because I imagine if there's a certain thing that a lot of people are pulling to try on, but nobody's buying it, like that's going to be informative versus something that people are pulling to try on, and then a lot of people are buying it. Like they're going to say, okay, what is it about this? What's the difference between these two things? And they can really use that data to help parse that information and really, I guess really develop how they stock items and better ways to stock items, because they're getting like really lots of data right then and there about how to move that way. And I feel like that's probably going to be a model that rolls out in general, I would say, across retail everywhere. Nike's just probably one of the first to do it. I'm sure they're not the first, but they're one of the first to kind of embrace it that way.
I think too, like the other part of it is, when somebody has the app in their hand, it's so much more valuable than any other type of marketing, or so much more valuable than any type of, money that's being spent to get in touch with customers. Like you can't beat the fact that if somebody is willing to have your app on their phone, and you can ping them with whatever information, sale, release info kind of stuff, like that just becomes that much more powerful for a brand or for a company. So for Nike, it makes sense to continue to push as much of the digital stuff onto people as possible, because that's just going to mean that they have a more intimate relationship with them as it grows.
Absolutely. Going from the digital space to, I guess, continuing in the digital space to sneaker customizers, who generally we know from afar. It looks like Nike is actually doing an official collab with a customizer, which is not something that generally happens. I would say generally if you're a collaborator on a Nike product, you're either an artist or you're a designer or really a creative in some way that hasn't been like customizers. Customizers have always seemed to get the what's the word I'm looking for? They've never really had they don't get the light. I guess the brands don't really look on them favorably. It seems obviously recently that's changed with the trend in like pro athletes getting their shoes customized for the game day and for the floor and stuff like that. But actually having a customizer getting official collab, that's not something that happens very often. I can't even think of anyone off the top of my head. Everyone that I'm thinking about is either like a graffiti artist or fine art or designer or something like that. Nick, you probably know a lot more in this area than I do. Is there any customizers that you know that have gotten like official collabs with the brand?
I mean, the shoe surgeon comes to mind. I know he did some stuff with Jordan where they actually did an event, and he kind of taught the Nike team, but also like a small group of consumers. And then I know that Mosh has done I believe it was a Puma collab through Finish Line, where he did I think there was like 300 pairs or something like that, pretty limited, pretty. I think the goal with all of that is like keeping it pretty high energy, and because like we talked about a few different times, I think that like art can be polarizing, and all the brands, all the retailers don't want to spend a bunch of money on let's say 5,000 pairs of shoes if only 10% of the people are actually going to like them. That's the quickest way I think you could probably just waste a lot of production money. But I do think that like to going back to even like the conversation about the Nike by Melrose, like this kind of localized stuff and the ability of people to create their own following, and like you look at like Shoe Surgeon or Mosh, those guys have hundreds of thousands of followers, and they've put their custom shoes on hundreds of athletes or hundreds of really influential people, and it just like that's kind of the future, is like you're going to be more and more focused, I think, with these types of things. But I still think that there's going to be hesitancy from the brand side of things to commit to somebody, and Tiffany, you might be able to talk to this a little bit better, but I think like the production cost to, go down the road with, shoes that aren't maybe just colors is probably just so expensive for the brands that they've got to play it safe still. Even though we're seeing more and more of it here and there, it's still like they're treading lightly to get into this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like the shoes, some of them don't seem like much of a collab. I mean, there's a couple logo changes. Like there's some writing on a sock liner. I mean, there's like performance-wise, material-wise, are there changes there? Like, I think there's levels of customization. Like, the easiest is doing a sock liner top cloth, or maybe a box or something. And then you get into just switching out materials. Then you get into higher and higher levels, like kind of like Kanye, where, he gets to impact the entire design and the shapes and the materials and the technologies that are involved. And so I like that it's getting more local, like you were saying, but I don't know. I'm kind of surprised by it, to be honest. I feel like back in the day, several years ago, the customizers were not, like they were definitely frowned upon. Like, why are you changing up the product? But nowadays, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I don't know. I've got a lot of mixed feelings about it, to be honest.
Do you happen to?
Yeah, and I was saying, let me just clarify here. The shoes are created by Julian Gaines. He goes by the name Jewop, which is Jew working on projects. And just to give you guys a little information about the program, he's actually doing the shoes in collaboration with Nike. He's setting up a 4-day summer camp on Chicago's South Side with a series of programs and art, writing, and more than 40 team participants. It'll end up with a pop-up shop at Chicago's Norte, where Jewop and the Nike Game Worn collection will be available on July 21st, and a Thoughts Scholarship experience to 500 kids across the city, which is pretty cool. So, I love that this is like a bigger program. It's not just him doing a shoe, that it's obviously rolling into something bigger for kids. And for those that don't recognize Julian Gaines' name, he's the one that did the bleach splattered Levi's Air Jordan 4s from earlier this year, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with because they were all over the internet. So it's really cool to see something like this. But Tiffany said something really interesting, and it's something that I don't like to nitpick at, but it's something that always kind of sat in the back of my mind, is what really is a collaboration. Is it just you change the colors on a shoe? Is it that you have a sock liner on a regular color of the shoe? Is it that the tag is changed? Do you have to change the materials for it to be a collaboration? Do you have to change a bit of the design of the shoe for it to be a collaboration? That's something that's always kind of stuck in my mind, and I've never, I guess there's never really an answer for that. And maybe the word collaboration is thrown around a little too much. Like when I think of a collab, I think back to what Brooklyn Projects did with like the Nike SB Dunk, where they changed it to the Rain and Blood, where they had like the brown. They changed the materials and made it brown, and they had like the blood splatter on it, and then they had like the T-shirt that went with it. It was like this whole kind of collection around it. But at the same time, you hear stuff where people just do a color change, and it's like, this is a collab. So where is that line? And you guys may not have the answer to that, so I'm just kind of throwing it out there. If you guys have thoughts on it, like where is that line of what's an official collaboration and what's a color change, or are all those in the basket?
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that collaboration is something like just the term collab, right, is like something that, we created this problem as consumers, right? Like for the longest time, that was the only thing that was hyped, like there would be, 30 Air Max 1 colorways in a year. And then there would be, 5 that were a collaboration where a boutique came in or an artist came in and did their version of it. And that created all of the hype and all of the brands pushing to do more and more. I mean, some of these brands have done, Reebok did 20 collaborations on the Question for the Question's 20th anniversary. Like that's just a lot of shoes to push out in a year, on top of, probably the other however many more that you're doing on a regular basis. And I think that's the craziest part about this is like it's like we've kind of created the monster here. It's kind of like the resale business too. Like that kind of has taken things to new levels and directions that I don't know that everybody would really want to go if we had the choice. But I think that, to Tiffany's point about the timing, the time that it takes to create these types of things, if somebody's just coming in and saying, cool, let me have, like, take for instance Finish Line. Our buyers would go in and say, we want this exclusive colorway. Now, is that a collaboration? Not really. It's just saying what color, in my opinion at least, it's just saying what colors sell the best for that particular retailer. And I also think that, from my perspective, look, I think a collaboration there has to be enough substance there, like you said. Maybe not necessarily in volume of product, but absolutely, a relationship, because that's where like things actually come about that are good, right? Like if people know each other and can vibe off of each other and create something together, that to me is a collaboration. But I don't know. What do you think, Tiffany?
So I think having worked on several collabs and several just colorway changes and stuff, I think if you boil it back down to the athlete, right? Like brands originally partnered with athletes because, brands partner with anyone because it means they'll sell more shoes and create more energy. When they partner with an athlete, in general, they get better performance out of the product because they get insights from that exceptional player. When they partner with a non-athlete, it's generally a colorway thing, right? Because I think the whole world of sneaker interest is still growing. But now you have people that are actually designing shoes. Like the amount of images from, I'm not kidding, like 14, 15-year-old kids on Instagram of them designing shoes is amazing. And some of those things that they're designing in there are super novel. Like, you're right, that would change how that product felt entirely. I think it would be interesting if they went and found those kids and those people that are actually inventing new things or have performance updates or comfort updates that maybe the brand isn't seeing. I think of that as a real true collab. Like when it engineering wise changed something about the product. I think the colorway changes now with Nike ID and all that, like that's probably an easy win. And I don't think of those as collabs at all. But as people continue to get more knowledgeable about sneakers and start really designing them more and more, I think that'd be super cool. And it would also improve the performance of the product. So it kind of seems like a win-win, but I don't know of anyone that's actually doing that.
That's interesting. Looking at it from that angle, it's really more taking the collab as something that improves the functionality of the shoe or adjusts the functionality of the shoe in a way that benefits the consumer in the end, as opposed to something as simple as the look of a shoe or something like that. It's interesting.
Yeah, because you have to remember that all these brands, they have designers that are responsible for the look. They get paid. They're professional designers that get paid to know what should look good, and they have color designers most cases. So if that team's not doing their job, then you need the outside world to do it. But like we talked about earlier, it's a shift, right? The brands are no longer leading the trend. The consumer is now driving the trend. So I'd hate to be in those roles.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is like to Jacques' point about talking about, there's a lot involved in this particular project that we're getting these 40 teens that get to participate and learn about the art, the writing, all of the stuff that's behind, kind of this is something that for the most part, brands don't have time to go and, take their team of designers or even like single designers. It's rare that they get out in front of the public. A lot of times, you're working too much on things to go and have a weekend camp for kids to teach them about sneakers or how to get into creating their own art or whatever that is. So I think that it's cool, that something like this happens, whether it's, collab or custom or whatever, is kind of irrelevant when the value that the business of sneakers is going to get out of this from Julian going and teaching 40 or 50 kids about what he's done and his experiences with sneakers is is really valuable for the future of all of what we do, all of what the sneaker business is, and really like could inspire some of these kids to get into working for the brands down the road. So I think that to me is like the awesome part of it.
Yeah, I think that's cool too. I think it could be like causes, like official causes instead of collaboration, because if you're helping kids and you're helping people by doing a branded or particularly colorway, like that's awesome. I'm all for continuing to do that, but is it still a collaboration? I don't know.
So would we call something like what Don C is doing? Is that a collaboration?
I'd have to dig into more of the details, but he's basically just swapping parts off of shoes, right? There's nothing really new. I would say that's like a part swap. It's getting close to a collab. I remember back in the day when we started doing that, and you just see some really interesting product come out. Now it's just it's what collabs have turned in. It's like second level collab. First level's change the color. Second is swap parts.
Changing parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was a big thing. That was a big thing for Ronnie and Kith, is he was doing these ASICs, and first it was like color and material changes. But then it kind of escalated to where he was kind of switching out parts for the shoes. So that's an interesting angle as well. Like part one, like level 1, level 2, and then like level 3, or which the ultimate level is when you really change a shoe in a way that makes it better or improves the functionality, and which is I think that's a very unique.
And I think that's kind of how the progression should go, right? Like if I'm a big business and I have a brand to protect or kind of a legacy behind me, then it takes some level of comfort to get somebody, like Ronnie's a great example, because he really did start with just like the most basics of colorways back in the day, and now has like pushed and become such a kind of his own standalone brand, his own, like I would say that he's like really like this generation's like Ralph Lauren, right? Like he's pushing things in directions and creating so much energy across every part of business that I think, that to me is like what you should strive for. But I also think that like in this day and age where people think that they have 500,000, followers on Instagram, they should get a collaboration with Jordan. Like that's like kind of just like ridiculous to think that, because you have nothing that's proven. If you don't have anything that's proven that what you're doing as far as design or even just energy, like either of those things, like just because you have the followers doesn't mean that you have the kind of skills that go along with it, or the business knowledge and the know-how that goes with actually selling product to consumers. So I don't know. It's a really interesting topic though. Like it's almost like maybe down the road we get to this kind of how you used to have like tier 0 accounts, where it's like these are the highest of the high, Nike retailers. Maybe the collaborations, quote collaborations, need to have its own kind of like levels to it, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm striving to get to tier 0 collaboration so I can do my own thing with Nike or whatever.
That's interesting. Right. It reminds me of when Jordan was untouchable for years. Like you could not. I mean, I remember projects and people wanting to use the Jumpman and using Jordan product. It was like, nope, nobody uses it. And now that's kind of gone away. But that could be a different level of it. But I think if you get too much of it, it becomes not interesting. Like if there's, now we have 100,000 different collabs. Like who cares? It's just another collab. Like one will be hot here and there, and then they're kind of boring.
Yeah, something that's always been interesting to me is like from an internal standpoint. Like I remember the Jordan Future came along, and it was super hot for a little while. But from what I understand, the story of how that shoe came about is because someone on the Jordan brand team just made themselves a pair and was just wearing them around campus, and people saw them, and that's how it actually became a shoe. Is that something that happens often? Are you guys, and I'm not sure if this is something you can reveal to us, Tiffany, are you guys able to cobble together stuff like that on campus and wear it around?
I defer to comment.
It
used to be kind of a thing that happened a lot because you were experimenting with things. You were like, okay, what does this minimal upper feel like on this maximum tooling? Like that used to happen until it kind of became fire, and then like you get to a point where like that's kind of low-hanging fruit. Like you still need to innovate something new, like come up with something totally radically new. But yeah, I mean, I would say I don't know that people do it much these days. I don't know. I'm not there, so I don't know.
I mean, my experience with that kind of stuff was when I was with Soul Collector, right? Like one of the shoes that we released as a collab with Soul Collector was the Jordan 11 Comfort, right? Which is like the low top with the Air Max 1 midsole and outsole. And like the Soul Collector collab was actually like a carbon fiber, version of that shoe. But that conversation and all of that stuff with Soul Collector started as, let's do a carbon fiber Jordan 11. And I don't know at what point it switched, because I wasn't in, obviously, all those conversations along the way. But, like, the idea from Soul Collector to do the Jordan 11 in a carbon fiber was the reason that shoe ended up happening. And then the Comfort shoe kind of became like we're going to do it on this one because, the Jordan 11 is relatively untouchable unless you're like a Jordan athlete.
Right.
So, to that point, right? Like I wonder if the same kind of thing happened with that, where like somebody was just kind of swapping things around, checking things out. And now it's like, oh, that shoe actually looks, good enough, or there's an opportunity to create some energy because, the Soul Collector one was super limited. We did an event in Santa Monica to release them and all of that stuff, but it was really the only version of that shoe that wasn't just kind of like your standard cut and paste the upper with the midsole of another all the way through, right? Like I feel like all of those were very, very basic, top and bottom shoes.
With that, by the way, like just swapping parts is no small task from an engineering standpoint. Everything's built on a last and they're built in a certain way to work in a certain way. Like it's not like super highly engineered, like precision engineering, but still, if you take an 11 midsole and try and put it on a 29, that's a major engineering effort, right? Because those things don't necessarily work together. So it's like, from an engineering standpoint, I think from a collab, it depends on what you're mixing with what. Like, not everything's just swappable. I don't want people thinking like you can take any midsole and put on any upper. No, it just does not work that way.
Yeah, it does not work that way for sure. I learned that lesson at the Adidas Creator Lab. When they put my shoes together, and I was like, oh, well, that doesn't fit there.
It's kind of interesting to think about too, like the timing of all of that really like is probably right around when like, social media, camera phones, all that stuff became such a big deal, right? Like where it's like, okay, let's cut this off because, the more of that stuff that gets out, the more of the testing stuff, the more of the stuff where it's like we're trying to figure out new ways of creating or re-engineering product and bringing in those like legacy elements. Like the more of that gets out, the less valuable it becomes once it hits the market, right? So I think there's an interesting timeline there that would be interesting to see, like when like people started posting a lot of that stuff, and because it used to exist on the like the forums, Nike Talk and Soul Collector and that back in the day, where you would see people from we kind of all knew a handful of people that worked at the brands that were talking to us on those forums, but we were keeping it under wraps because we didn't want them to get in trouble for like testing what they were trying to see if anybody was interested in what they were doing. So
yeah, and this kind of goes back to the whole customizer conversation, because a lot of customizers have kind of made their names through these mashups, I guess you would say, of different shoes on a different upper, like a different last on a different upper. Or swapping out parts, or just swapping out, or doing like really high end materials. So I mean, I guess that there's a business decision there as well. In addition to being like, oh, I made this cool thing, that's improved, but it's more of like, this is going to get my name out there, and this is how people are going to find out about me too. So
and it's definitely resulted in a handful of those customizers getting like I would say like the actual career placement jobs with Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Asics. I mean, there's definitely a bunch of people, like if you've been in the sneaker world long enough and paying attention to the kind of culture and community side of it, a lot of people have worked their way from like, jokingly, but like their mom's basement or their parents' garage into like an amazing career opportunity doing work for one of these major brands. So
like, I'm not mad at it at all. It's awesome. If that's how you get in, that's how you get in. You got to sometimes you got to do whatever you can to get inside the door. So I get it. For Tiffany, it was just like, oh, I'm just going to be a plastics engineer and innovate, and then I'll be irresistible.
I just applied online. Just apply online.
Yeah, I just applied online after I innovated plastic, but whatever.
I didn't invent plastic, so we're clear. I did not invent
I didn't say
plastic.
invent. Not invent, but you were an innovator in plastic engineering. So that tells me more than I know. I know already. Like, she did something that I probably
and
could
like
never
casually.
do. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know
casually in the background, she had like the high school volleyball trophy, right? Yeah.
Yep.
It's a medal.
Oh, medal.
It's a medal.
I didn't get it out. I
Amazing.
should have got it out next time.
That's funny. And speaking of high school athletics, the folks over at Reebok, they've been focused on fitness for a very, very long time. I feel like Reebok has reinvented themselves as the fitness brand, especially with CrossFit. CrossFit was obviously really huge a few years ago, and they dove in all the way. And it says that their president, if I'm reading this correctly, says that fitness is the future. I don't know what that means. Could somebody help me here? What is fitness is the future? What does that mean?
I mean, I think that for Reebok, hopefully it's the future. Otherwise, they won't be around much longer. So,
Wow.
I mean, and I say that, like, most people that are listening to this probably know how passionate I am about that brand and the stories that are behind that brand. But like, it's such a long way from, kind of like the fitness element for them has been like this new thing, right? And I think this is just a kind of like, let's face the reality of like, if we're not selling to the CrossFit like society that exists, then where do we even exist as a brand? Because you can't sell, they're not selling enough retro product. Like, I only buy a few shoes a year from them. So, like, I know that there's not too many people out there that are buying like, some of this legacy product that they're putting out. But I think that there is truth to it, right? Like, people are more and more aware of health. They're more and more conscious of what's going on in the world. I think, there's so much garbage going on in the world right now that just paying attention to how you take care of yourself is getting more and more important, because we've kind of been fed all of this stuff as consumers through generations of marketing, right? Like, you buy government cheese, so to speak, because it's the most profitable cheese for Kraft to create, not because it's the best for you, because they can manufacture it in a way that is, going to make them 98 cents on every dollar you spend. So I think that like that's what they're trying to get at. For the brand itself, they've always been connected to fitness, and their highest energy moments outside of probably the Allen Iverson era were absolutely fitness related. So whether that's running or kind of like the 80s like aerobic type stuff like that became super popular, where they were just like the front runner in that. And I think they were for a little bit with CrossFit, right? Like Nike stepped in and took a lot of that market. But I think that the future of a lot of this stuff definitely has to be in like performance oriented product.
Yeah, I mean, the particular article is from Footwear News, I think, and they say in there that they want to use their backstory and their foundation to build a modern version of fitness. Now, modern version of fitness, I love it. Like the idea that we're going to wake up tomorrow and there's a new version of fitness that's like easier to get into, the product's more comfortable, like you actually want to get up and do it every day, like that. I think that would be amazing. And if they focused on it, I really love their latest product. I think that would be super cool. I mean, I'm not into leotards and jazzercising, so if that's there, I'm not in, but I don't know.
I would say, too, that DMX cushioning, probably one of the most important cushionings, systems of, I would say, all time. It was basically just like, if you got into it in the 90s, when they released like the DMX Run series and a lot of those offshoots, you know, some of the Iverson shoes had it. That was like pinnacle cushioning. Like it was something that like you probably thought was the most comfortable shoe you ever wore. And now they're looking to like bring back a new DMX. So in 2020, and I think that is kind of like it's a good foundation for a shift in direction for a company, right? Like if you look at like Nike and Visible Air, or Nike and Zoom Air, or you know, more recently Adidas and Boost, like those types of focus on the technology always result in, not always, a large percentage of the time result in something awesome for the brand. So hopefully this does that for Reebok.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, DMX is like this, I guess you would call it moving air, where like they had a certain amount of air in the bottom of the shoe and it would move based on your pressure points and cushioning and rebound in a certain way. Definitely something I would say look into, just because it's just something different. But back on the fitness train for Reebok. I think their huge focus in fitness has really paid off for them, especially when they got out of basketball. That kind of left them, I would say that left them out of the energy market, but it's almost like they found their lifeline in the fitness world, which may have been something that they've always been necessarily a part of, but it just wasn't highlighted by the brand as much, because obviously basketball shoes tend to take up the majority of the market share when it comes to like that marketing side of things. But with them making that move into CrossFit and really building that brand and having this new focus on fitness, you can really see how things are moving for them. So I think that's very exciting. I think it's pretty cool. All right, with that being said, last story before we get out of here is about Super Heroic. So I don't know how many of you guys know about Super Heroic. It's started by a guy named Jason Maiden. It's a line just for kids, basically, and it's inspired by a child's imagination and being a superhero and you being the superhero you are as a kid. And the shoes come in a really cool packaging that when you open it up, it goes Super Heroic, and it comes with a cape, and there's like a card inside, and the packaging is really nice. It's super kid friendly, and it's really made to inspire kids. But there is some talk on the internets about Nike and their new Future series for young athletes and how it seems very similar to the Super Heroic brand. Now this is not. I feel like this is something that kind of happens a lot, and we're not even to take this away from Nike in particular, but it seems like you see this a lot when something kind of gets popular that kind of bubbles up from beneath. You see brands have their own take on it, and it kind of feels like that's what Nike is doing with this. This is this conversation could go a bunch of different ways. It's like, why do businesses do this? But I guess that is really the question. Why do businesses do this? Why don't they innovate in their own way? And why is it that they kind of tap into the consciousness of the greater community? Feel free either of you to answer.
I was waiting for Nick. I think it's an interesting. I think Jason, what he's done and his story behind Super Heroic is just amazing. You know, it's based on his son and getting out and getting more fit, and I love that story. And that storyline to me is very different than the storyline that Nike's telling. Like, I think, you know, things at Nike take a long time from a concept all the way to deliver a campaign like that. It doesn't happen overnight, you know? So in theory, if you think like they were working on it for a couple of years, probably, maybe longer. And Jason's company launched, a couple of years ago now also. Yeah. To me, you know, I think there's a lot of coincidence out there. And I think anything that helps getting kids moving should coexist. Because, you know, there's all kinds of different ideals about it. There's all kinds of things. And Super Heroic's really fun. I mean, a cape, like, how awesome is that? I want adult capes. Like, where's the adult version?
Yeah.
And I don't think Nike's offering capes. They're looking at it more as, like, the athletes that will become professionals. They're the future pros, right? So there's two different angles to it. Now, I think it is too bad. If I had a startup and, you know, a kind of novel idea, and then Nike started producing it. If it was a good enough idea, you know Nike's going to produce it at some point. Now, whether they copy you or it's a coincidence is really hard to say, but it definitely would be concerning for me. Like, I mean, Nike's so powerful and they have so much space. Like, there's a point where, like, collab, do it together because you're both doing good for people, right? Like, do it together.
Right.
If you can.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of take like the other side of that conversation, right? I absolutely think like they should coexist. Like whatever you can do to get kids thinking, you know, about health, about fitness, about all of those things is absolutely like the most important piece. My experience, you know, like moving from place to place is that a lot of times when people are in a position where they are really passionate about something, they'll you know, maybe run into roadblocks that exist. You know, corporate environment is always tough to navigate, and when somebody's really passionate, like specifically Jason, you know, like I feel like if you don't 100%, or if you're not 100% going down the path that you want to go down with a company, you know, there's no reason why you shouldn't, you know, look elsewhere and create your own thing. Like that to me is like way more fulfilling. Now, my experience with a lot of the companies that I've worked for is that, you know, the people, when someone that's that valuable leaves a company, I think that those companies try to listen after it's too late. You know, like if somebody's there that's pushing ideas and pushing an energy for a company that can, you know, and then decides to step away from it, it's really hard to fill that void. And even on teams that I've had, when somebody that we really depend on leaves, it's hard to kind of move forward without just like looking at that person and saying, wow, how did we lose this person, the opportunities to create with this person? And you almost like default, you know, to, well, this is what they were talking about kind of thing. But, you know, I also totally think that there's, you know, so much coincidence, you know, not necessarily coincidence. I think that we're all in the same kind of path in life in some regard or another. So like the ideas that come, you know, in our conversations here on this podcast can absolutely exist in another podcast that we've never listened to. You know, like that's kind of just the way the flow, the ebb and flow of like creation and product and marketing and all of our lives kind of roll together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes it does absolutely. Energy. You know, I feel like no one has like that idea isn't just yours. It probably floats around in a lot of different places, and how it's executed is all up to the individual. And the need for kids to get out and be active is something obviously that's been floating around for a while. And it looks like Nike took this angle, Jason took his angle, so both can coexist. I would love for them to do a collaboration together. That'd be amazing for Nike to collab with Super Heroic. I think that would be really awesome. But anyway, well, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I really enjoyed the show today. Lots of cool topics, customizers and collabs and stuff like that. It's stuff that's really, really close to me. Not that I've ever done it. It's just something that I'm really passionate about, and I love the people that do it. I just see their work, and I'm so fascinated by it. So to be able to talk to you two about that was pretty awesome. Anyway, as always, guys, I want to make sure you follow us. You can follow us on the Outside Pods on Twitter and Instagram, and then obviously you can follow me. That's Jacques.Slade. Actually, that's my email. Get my email address. Good Lord.
And your phone number.
My phone number. I'm at Cousteau all over the internet, Twitter, Instagram, all of those places. And yeah, again, if this was an omelet, I'm the oil that you cook with that makes everything go a lot smoother. And these two are they're the substance. They are the veggies. They are the things that matter in this conversation. So Nick, go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
Nick Engvall, NickEngvall on all platforms, and a site called Sneaker History, at Sneaker History on all platforms. But really, I'm just the hot sauce. So Tiffany, tell them where they can find you.
I guess I'm the salt and pepper. I don't know. Tiffany Beers, Tiffany, B as in boy, EERS, and at YouTube and Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, with that being said, guys, again, thank you for listening / watching. We really do appreciate it. Hope you're learning something, getting some good information. And again, if you want to tell us that you hate us or that you love us, or if there's a topic you want us to discuss, make sure you leave it in the comments either on YouTube or leave it in the comments on Instagram or leave it on the comments on SoundCloud or anywhere you can find us. Let us know. We're definitely listening and we appreciate your feedback. With that being said, we enjoy you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see / hear from you next week. Peace.